tapped into a podcast by The Smartest Animal, brought to you by A2X LTD, at the intersection of art and authenticity. Visit thesmartestanimal.com for more. The following series was recorded over the course of a year, moderated by Siri, hosted by A2.
Give us the 60-second intro into AJ Valson, the person behind the artist and the art.
AJ is a multi-hyphenate creative, and music is the best way that I communicate my artistry, namely piano. But beyond that, I've used piano and music to bridge other interests and areas and disciplines that ultimately come into a very distinct presentation. And I've created a brand off of it, to being that I have two names beginning with A. And I've noticed that as I have brought people into that world, it's a lot bigger than A2. But again, I want to be the bridge that connects a lot of fields that seemingly do not relate.
Help me out with what the mission for A2X LTD is at this point. Help me out with what LTD stands for.
So as far as a mission statement, what I have developed for the sake of sharing the current iteration, because I think it might evolve past this, but I think this is a good place to start. The mission statement that I have written down is, at the intersection of art and authenticity, let them dream. So an intersection, in a sense, is that X symbol that you see on the roads, or, any objects, two objects that are, coming together at that particular angle. And whether it's, like a perfect 90-degree angle, whatever the case may be, the undeniable thing about an intersection is the fact that those two poles have to cross. And so that X also entendres as, the multiplication symbol. And I think that's pretty powerful, like visually, as far as, the connection that you can make and the meaning that it brings to amplify a community, to amplify somebody's talents, to be able to say to the next person, hey, I can help you with this because I've gone through this before. Let me show you how, and let me show you who helped me as well, because it wasn't just me. So that is the mission statement. And I think let them dream specifically is important, because there's a lot of times where you are developing your craft and you are kind of shunned or banned from thinking freely, or, imagining, or being creative, and that kind of thing. And that could be for a lot of different reasons, the upbringing that you grew up in, the ethnic backgrounds that fill into your life, so many different factors. Everybody's different in a sense. And I think saying let them dream, I teach students as young as 5 or so. I teach them piano. It's really important for them to have that creative liberty and be enabled to think freely and let them dream, where they have music as the medium for themselves to express how they feel as they're developing their thoughts and ideas. Because of course, when you're that young, you're not really cognizant of who you are and like what you can do. But those are the memories that are built on as you move forward and grow up as an individual. And I can say so for myself, as far as how that applies. So I think LTD, let them dream, is probably the most important part of those 6 characters. Of course, A2X, we've already discussed that, but I think that is more so the bridge into the mission statement, let them dream.
I love it. And again, all the things you just mentioned, right? X is the symbol of the intersection, right? The crossing, right? We're talking to a multi-hyphenate creative. We're talking to somebody who's, multicultural, right? With somebody who has multidisciplines when it comes to, different instruments, multidisciplines when it comes to different expressions. So I think it's extremely fitting, right, for you particularly. And then, again, to that mission about wanting to bring community and bring those villages with you, again, amplifying others' talents, right? That X is spot on. So with that, right, let's walk into the branding piece of this, right? You've got A2, which is you, and then you're adding the X, which is the multiplier for a number of things you'd like to get out of this, right? And so talk to me in terms of why that branding is important, and then from there, I'd love to go into the other projects that, beyond just A2, AJ Valson, the pianist sitting on stage playing music. What are the other things you're doing to amplify that village and make sure you're bringing that community with you?
So the branding is cool because the current iteration is the second that exists. The first one that I had, this goes back to like maybe 2015. Yeah, 2015, when I was completing an intro to graphic design course, and I was learning a lot of these skills that I still use to this day, lateral skills as I call them, being able to design flyers and not having to outsource that, which I feel, is just one of the things that has been very valuable to me over time. So during that time, I started branding A2 Nelito. I didn't start with A2X. I didn't start with A2. I found an artist in the UK, a rapper who goes by A2, which was another one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure I made that distinction. But of course, A2 is kind of like a shorter way to remember, what it is that we got going on. So it's stuff. And I made stickers, put the handle on there. I've had a lot of domains leading up to thesmartestanimal.com. And so that one was unpacking A2 because I was focusing a lot on the writing aspect of what I was doing, which I did a lot for my college courses and which I've continued on, and which now at present is going to sit as a newsletter, which we'll talk about in a bit. So that logo, that original A2 logo, was like a hand-drawn thing that I did on an iPad. And I updated it, quote unquote, to really, give it more of that modern feel, minimalist design that I had been inspired by, over the years, where I look at like artworks and logos and things like that and just appreciate the simplicity of seeing something and even seeing shapes within it, the arrow and the FedEx logo as an example, and really just taking that branding and being able to just put it anywhere and it look seamless and flexible and sleek. The original A2 logo was hand drawn, and so, in a sense, you could still apply that, but I think updating it was really cool. And since then, I've been able to just use that as a centerpiece for my branding, whether it's music projects that I put out. If you look in like the corners of the artwork that I design for my music, you're going to see that logo pop up. Even the Film Hop singles, which I didn't design, but I spoke with the designer to help conceptualize. You'll see those logos in the corner, and wanted that to be consistent as far as placement, at least for that series of work. And that individual, Ethan Fender, was actually one to help me kind of like really finalize that design, because we made some like very, very small modifications. You wouldn't be able to tell too much, but ultimately the marketing for what I'm doing with A2X and, the Smartest Animal brands, things like that, they are really designed to not show what I look like, because even though it's the work that I'm doing, I think it's bigger than that. I know it's bigger than that. And so I don't want my likeness to be the central visual focus of that. And that's not to say that there aren't pictures of me online and things like that. I mean, self-aware about, how and where I present that information and those photos, really, and that type of thing. But it really just becomes a matter of, what is the best foot that you're putting forward? And I think the work that I've put out is not based on my likeness, for models and stuff like that. That's important to them, but it's not my industry. So it ultimately becomes, about the work that I'm putting out. And right now, what's been cool is, I'll use my Instagram as an example, my Instagram page, Smartest Animal. I just finished the show, which we'll also talk about, and the outfits that we wore for the show were pretty colorful in nature. And so it was really nice to finish promoting that campaign of the show and then have this direct contrast of, the photography side of my work, which, I have a black and white film photography library collection that I've been developing. And so it's just been a really great opportunity creatively to use this branding as a way to share everything. I didn't want it to look overly like an instrument, like a piano or, or like a camera shutter or that kind of thing. And that was really intentional because I didn't want to, in a sense, limit myself. I wanted to continue dreaming about what I could do beyond what it is that I have at the core of my work. But as most people have gotten to know me, the core of that is piano and stuff. So, but yeah, the branding is a really important piece for me to, just have readily and available, because it visually communicates what I like to express and how I like to present myself anyways.
No, again, I think, just specifically with that, right? Just the logo not carrying your likeness. You mentioned it, but it's more about the work than it is about the individual who was the vessel to deliver that work to a certain extent, right? And so I think that, that again just resonates completely with me. And then certainly when you talk about kind of the again, I don't want to put any limitations on how, what I am as a multi-hyphenate creative, right? Yes, yes, I do photography. Yes, I do poetry. Yes, I play piano. Yes, I can play anything else. I can be a music director, newsletter writer here, and we'll get into some of that stuff. But yeah, I can do all that, but I don't need a logo for each one of those, right? Each one of those comes from A2, comes from the A2 camp, if you will. And as a result, it's hey, this was a product of this effort, right? As opposed to this came from AJ, and it's only a photography project, right? I mean, even in a lot of your work today, you're blending those skills, right? It's not just a piano project. It's not just a photography project. It's not just a written word project, right? It becomes kind of again, multi-hyphenate project from my multi-hyphenate creative, right? So I think it's all on spot on with kind of how you're approaching this.
Because there have been so many different ways I've looked into, and we've talked about this over several recordings, I think centralizing all that info has been really important. So that's where the newsletter comes in. As far as the branding that I'm doing for like project names and the like, I've branded it as A2X LTR. So A2X e-newsletter, just like A2X LTD is just going to be, the overall general name of anything that I'm doing here. I mean, that's the name of the LLC. And A2X JPG is going to be photos, etc. It's not going to be a strict like 6-letter thing, but it's something that allows you to, kind of have a consistent way of sharing how you're presenting your information, how you're representing yourself, and how you're communicating. And so the newsletter, I think, is going to be the most important way that we share a monthly newsletter, centralizing all that info. Over the time, I've noticed that if I'm communicating with friends and family about what it is that I'm doing, the text messages kind of get to be a lot, because the work is a lot and the catalog is deep, and I've been doing this for a while. So the newsletter is exciting because it will be used to communicate. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, this recording, it's likely because you found out through the newsletter. And I think that's going to be the most direct to consumer way that I communicate with people who have invested, have come out to a show, have collaborated, are currently collaborating, are fans, haven't met, that kind of thing. All of them can find that information there and in the newsletter, A2XLTR. And from that point, it gets disseminated across social media platforms, which, as we know, not everybody has, but everybody has an email, right? And so it gets back to that, marketing 101, where it's like, what are like some of the most key components that you have for a campaign and a remarketing strategy? So case in point with that, send out an email ahead of time announcing, that this newsletter will be on the way. And among those people that were notified were people who came out to the show and who had purchased tickets and stuff. So being able to have that data, and not only there's not just data, it's like real people that you're connecting with. Being able to have that information moving forward is really important, because that's how we build. And all the framework is there, all of the the tools and the information and the how-to are there. And as I say, the money's already printed. You just got to go get it.
Well, in the case of our government, they're printing it right now, man. Like with your name on it. So
just let me hold some.
That's exactly it. Exactly it. No, I think the newsletter is great, right? And it's far too easy to not even say something wrong on social media and get deplatformed. So if you can get off platform, right, and get into an email newsletter, right, where anybody's going to find you at all times. Everybody's got an email, but not everybody's got an X. Some people might got a band on X. Some people might, whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter. but ultimately, you know, much more intelligent that way. When we talk about the newsletter, is it just, not just, but is it announcements? This is coming. Here's what we're working on. Here's what you can find. You know, how, what should people expect to see in the newsletter?
Yeah, so content wise, I think there's going to be general announcements for music that I'm putting out, maybe some anniversary videos, that type of thing. So, for example, my first piano album came out around Christmas time. So, around Christmas time, there's not only going to be something written about that, but there's also a Christmas piano album that I put out around that time. So, you know, all of that information is going to be appropriate with the season. And I think that's going to be really important because not everybody might know at the time that, oh, this exists. And, you know, there, as we know, there's just so many ways to get information, but, you know, opting in allows you to get that update. And of course, because it's going to be on a monthly 4 to 6 week basis, it allows, you know, some breathing room, you know, for people to absorb what it is that's there, because I'd say that there's plenty to dig into. And, you know, as you know, from our notes from this conversation, there is plenty to go into. And I think the variety is important, moreover, because there will ultimately be something for everybody. And I'm starting to see how we can reach more bodies. And, you know, even in like demographics that like I might not have information to, but can have conversations with parents and things of that nature.
Yep.
So it's going to be general updates. I think another thing to keep in mind is that this is where the show updates are going to be as well. And performances are not something that I do under A2 / the smartest. Oh, it's really the smartest animal that I'm performing under now. That's not going to be like a very common thing, I would say. I don't think that performing as the smartest animal will be common, but at the same time, you know, when the news gets out, I want to be able to communicate with people ahead of time and be able to plan that. I'd like to see in the future that, you know, we be able to perform more, but ultimately having a way to communicate with people first and foremost about these types of things is going to be a surefire way to get retention. I've been able to see people come back to more than one show and just kind of see the power and just, okay, like you're able to get them in show A, get them in show B, and now they're excited for show C because of like what you've been able to show. And I feel like the only way that you do that is get direct. So there's going to be a couple other avenues, as I said, that would be covered in over the span of the newsletter. But ultimately, it's just going to be, I think my goal with this too is to not only like send out updates. I think design wise and the way that I plan to lay it out, I do want to make it readable, make it enjoyable. I want people to look forward to having this in their inbox. And at the same time, there's going to be a delicate balance of not overwhelming the reader with information because, you know, there's a lot to look at and stuff. So being able to send this out once we finish this recording and have this as part of the first newsletter coming out in August of 2024 is going to ultimately give us data and information to test moving forward to see, you know, are we achieving that or not? But ultimately, I do want people to look forward to this, especially with the set frequency that we have. So it would almost be like, oh, you know, if the newsletter comes like a day late to them, they feel like, oh, I'm missing out on this A2X LTR. Where's it at? Like, when's the next show going to be type of thing? And that scarcity, I feel, is going to create anticipation, which I feel is important. So there will be plenty of information to get into, and looking forward to keeping people updated on a more regular basis without having to, you know, send out text messages and things like that, because I think this is how we scale.
Yeah, and I love it, right? Particularly when, you know, you mentioned kind of a monthly or every 6 weeks type of cadence. You know, we've all subscribed to those newsletters where it's you get it every day and it becomes white noise. Right? It's just like, all right, man, I got that thing again. I've got to go read this 6 pages again. It's not happening, right? So you just kind of tune it out, unsubscribe, move on. But I love the, you know, just let's string it out. Let's make sure there's meaningful updates. There's something enjoyable to read in there, not just, you know, something else I had to dream up last night because it was the last thing on my mind. I had to get in a newsletter, right? Which happens far too often with most newsletters. Like, all right, I got to publish this today. What am I going to put in it? If you've got 4 to 6 weeks to put in updates, the amount of work that you're accomplishing in those 4 to week spans is so damn much. You'll have plenty to fill that newsletter with, right? Just from all the avenues that you're taking through this. So I think it's a great cadence to achieve. And then if you can keep people coming back, you've got people coming back to a first, second show, right? This is not a perfect corollary, but they say like if you've got a bank account or bank, right? If you've got a savings account, you're going to be at that bank for a while, but there's a high likelihood you leave. You got a savings and a checking. Now you got a savings and a checking and a credit card. Now you got a savings and a checking and a mortgage. They ain't go nowhere, right? So the first time they come to an AJ show, the second time they come to an AJ, the third time A2X, right? It's just eventually, that's just what they do, right? They just know this is where I go, right? And so I love it. I love everything you're kind of mentioning here.